let's start with your number 5. What would you do first if you ruled the world?
After the Queen dies, and I understand how popular she is, but after the Queen has passed away, and whatever pomp and ceremony is applied to her passing, I would abolish the monarchy.
Would you?
Yeah, in its entirety.
How much time between the sad point at which that would happen and then would you kind of move it, as it were?
The day after her funeral. Yeah.
Why, Peter? That's a really interesting rule the world suggestion.
Yeah. Well, the royal family is undemocratic, and it's an outdated notion of privilege by birthright, and it doesn't really have a place in 2022 Great Britain, I would suggest.
I'll tell you what, the thing is, the Queen is so much the hub, the glue that keeps the entire British monarchy together, that, heaven forbid, when she does go, there are fears that it might fall apart at the seams, because let's face it, Prince Charles is not exactly Mr. Popularity, is he?
No, and it's already showing signs of falling apart with certain characters leaving the UK and
California,
and giving up their responsibilities. But, you know, I'd be very fair and generous. I'd give all the other members a 3-bed semi and a decent family saloon.
Whereabouts would you place
Andrew's semi would be in York, all right?
Because he's been banned from there, is
he? yeah, you know, so I wouldn't leave them destitute, but I'd then let them fend for themselves. And you know what? They own so much land. It's not just Balmoral, Sandringham, Windsor, Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
You know,
but isn't a lot of that... You're starting to sound a bit like a communist, Peter. I mean, you're not going to start snatching land from people just because they've had it for centuries in their own family. A lot of this stuff that they've got is their own stuff. You can't just take it off them.
Well, the civil list has gone some considerable way towards funding it, maintaining it. And
it has.
Its upkeep.
But the point is that, for example, the castles in some places, maybe not all of them, but some of them are privately owned. So you can't just nick them off the family. I mean, if you're going to strip them of all their titles, you've got to at least let them live somewhere.
Mike, I'm ruling the world.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Exactly. He's in charge.
See, this is where I get it wrong.
He's in charge.
Okay, then. All right. So the first item of business, Peter Bleksley appears to be some kind of Maoist. Wants to get rid of everybody's property.
I love it. I think it's a sweeping suggestion.
Well, who's he going to come after next? That's fine. What, number 4? What would you do next?
I would legalise and regulate, please don't forget the word regulate, the entire illegal drugs industry.
Well, all of it?
The lot of it, thereby ripping it from the vice-like grip of organised crime.
Interesting move. Well, you have one thing in common with Sadiq Khan, because he wants to legalise marijuana. He's over in California, living it up, making himself out to be some kind of rock star from Britain. And he says it's time we legalise marijuana.
But he's talking about piecemeal, bit by bit, and this, that and the other. Now,
he deludes himself that he's in charge of whether or not to legalise marijuana. It is not the job, nor is it within the purview of the Mayor of London to legalise cannabis, even in London.
And if you speak to some of the really sharp minds who are part of the drug law reform movement, and there's some really, really clever people in that movement, you will hear from them saying that piecemeal legalisation of this drug and that drug isn't really the way forward. It's not going to strip that industry away from organised crime. It does so much harm, and that's because it's gangsters running it. Gangsters want you to take more. Gangsters want you to take different, more dangerous, more addictive drugs. If you can walk down the high street and get what you want, and it's been properly manufactured in a laboratory, it's not full of garbage, and it's not going to kill you if you abide by the instructions that come in the packet, we will reduce harm.
But isn't the problem, and I'm not saying you're completely wrong about this, but isn't the problem that if you regulate it, there will always be somebody standing around the corner or sitting on a moped who said, look, I know they're only giving you this much, we've got a load more over here.
Like alcohol and cigarettes.
Well, no,
but they're minimal problems. They are
in America,
tiny problems.
in America, this is exactly what's happening. So in Colorado, they've got a really bad illegal dealing situation, which has been born of legalising cannabis. So cannabis can only be sold to people over 18. Its strength is regulated. So there are all these dealers saying, I don't care what age you are, and I've got super strong. Also, in Canada, where they've legalised cannabis, they're very worried because apparently half the country is constantly stoned. So the legalisation process isn't necessarily the path to a kind of drug nirvana, if you see what I mean.
What was the word I emphasised when I said it? Legalise and regulate.
Right, I mean,
regulation is key.
Yeah, one of the other things, I'm afraid, I mean, I had this conversation with somebody when I lived in New York in the 80s when you know, cocaine use was at an all-time high. There is now, I think London is now the cocaine capital of the world, right? And he said to me, the problem is with drugs is that people take drugs because they make them feel good. They make them feel better. And, you know, that's why, unfortunately, never going to get rid of it. And one of the things that's happened in America, since the Mexican sort of drug dealers have ceased to trade in cocaine and marijuana, because the marijuana is legal largely, they're now making a lot of these opioids, these fake, horrible, really dangerous, like sort of, you know, fake opium and fake morphine and all that. And so they find something else to make, don't they?
But I think where Peter's on the right track is, you know, the war on drugs, the so-called war on drugs, has been waged in the Western world now for over half a century, for over 50 years, 60 years, and it has resulted in a massive defeat for the authorities. So I think Peter's right. We've got to think about a new approach to drug use.
Well, I think what we can say is that Peter's version of the world is certainly very
interesting.
From the one that we had. It's very good. So what's your next thing?
Thank you. I will immediately admit Ukraine into NATO.
Okay.
Good one.
Thereby declaring war on Russia's illegally invading
All right, then
force.
switch all the lights off.
We will...
You're not planning to rule the world for very long, then?
No, listen, bear me out, gentlemen, right? OK? Bear me out.
Go on.
We have the capability within NATO to smash their invading force in Ukraine into smithereens and send them back home, just like we did in Kuwait to Saddam Hussein's forces. Let me just remind you, everybody, with an illegal invasion of a sovereign state, exactly what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, but the Iraqi army was a bit smaller than the Russian one, to be fair.
So be it. So be it.
And they didn't have any nukes either.
Yeah, and it was a limited coalition that went to... that carried out that action in Kuwait, a limited coalition. NATO's a far bigger beast.
Yeah.
So you think you want to send a message to Putin, you know, that you can't tell us whether or not Ukraine joins NATO. We hereby admit Ukraine to NATO, and you can do one, Vlad.
Absolutely. And do you know why? Why I would do this? Not only to repel them out of that country so Ukraine can start rebuilding itself, but you know what? This whole nuclear threat is a nonsense.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Our armed forces are brilliant, okay? Courageous, smart, technically very astute. Our security services are astonishing. And even if Putin thought about hitting the nuclear button, we would know about it, we could thwart it, and we would stop it before his hand got anywhere near it.
He's a playground bully, and playground bullies always turn out to be cowards. Well, we're running out of time, so let's move on, shall we?
Number 2.
In the Maoist tone of things, right? Abolish all fee-paying schools and pass a law that says a child has to go to the school closest to
You've finally
its
done
home.
something that I totally agree with this. I've said this all my life. I think the worst thing about Britain is private schools, and all the people that argue with me are not actually the toffs. They're the people who say, well, I work really hard, I want my kids to do well, my local state school's rubbish, I think I should be allowed to put them in a fee-paying school. Because an awful lot of middle-class people struggling to do that, do it.
Yeah, I think if we abolish all that and couple the law with the fact that you go to your nearest school, what we actually do is kind of level things out. Now, levelling is kind of a very popular word at the moment, isn't it?
It's all the rage.
And it will then inspire...
down.
It will stop this social engineering whereby people move home so they can get their kids to a particular school, and that's utterly undemocratic in itself, I think. We'll really level up for everybody, and everybody will be inspired to make that school down the road the best school it can possibly be, and it builds community.
I agree with that, actually. I do think you'd have a lot more equality if everybody mixed together, so I'm giving
you 10
the idea
for that
one.
I'm also for freedom of choice, so I'm a little slightly worried, but I like the idea.
Well, you haven't got freedom of choice if you have to pay a lot of money, you haven't got it.
But if you've got the money, you should be able to have the choice to do it. Anyway, move on.
Final, number one.
Drum roll.
I would offer a £5 million reward for information leading to the capture of Kevin Parle.
Is that tall guy?
Yes.
The one that you've been chasing for many a long year?
3 years.
Where is he, do you think?
3 years. I can't tell you live on TV, can I?
Who is he again? Explain.
He's wanted for the murder of 2 separate murders. He's unconvicted but wanted for both. The shooting dead of a 16-year-old boy called Liam Kelly in 2004, and the shooting dead of a 22-year-old mother of 3 young children, Lucy Hargreaves, in 2005. Merseyside police are currently offering £20,000 £1,000 as a reward for information leading to its capture. But just a couple of weeks ago, the American authorities offered $5 million for information about the Kinnahan and certain members of the Kinnahan family.
Yeah.
Now, they originate from Ireland. They're wanted in connection with very serious global criminality. And when you start offering rewards like that, $5 million, that gets results.
Action
20 grand is great, but it's nowhere near great enough. So that's what I'd offer as a reward.
Well, listen, I have to say, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Mr. Bleksley, thank you very much indeed. Radical. We'll be putting all those out again. Top 5 things that he would do if he ruled the world. Peter Bleksley, extraordinary stuff. I think the best one yet.